Welcome to season 2 of Between Sundays, the podcast where we have conversations, we wrestle in between Sundays. And we're super excited to be here with you. My name is Theo, and of course, I've got with me the great Maxine Higgins.
Oh, great today. I like that. Hey, everybody.
We're super excited to be back with season 2. And look, y'all, we've got a great episode planned for you today. We're going to talk about how to fight. So let's talk about it.
Living between Sundays.
All right. So we're super excited to be here for season 2. And you guys remember from season 1, a lot of you guys remember, we talked a lot about having conversations, being willing to go out and start hard conversations. And maybe you hear about these topics at church, maybe you don't hear about them at your church. But the whole thing is, can we just start having conversations together? We want to wrestle through some of these topics together. And then hopefully you carry on the conversations once you finish with the episode. And so we have from season 1, lots of people that have come to us and say, man, that topic was really good. And that's not a pat on our backs.
Yeah.
It's just straight up that God's been using it. God's been speaking to people through it. People are saying, I'm able to talk to coworkers. I'm able to talk to family members. I'm able to talk about these things finally, right? And so that's the purpose of this whole thing. And in season 2, we've got some new things in store for you.
Yeah. So I want to thank everybody who's left comments on YouTube, on Instagram. You've sent us fan mail. You've sent us emails, whatever it is. Thank you for that. It does encourage us to know that, okay, what we're doing works. So please continue to do that going into season 2. But yeah, you just mentioned we're trying to do something new because it's season 2. We want to always add a little something, keep it fresh. So we're still going to have the same great conversation that we always have going back and forth about these topics. But towards the end, so you do want to stay tuned, we're going to start introducing a little segment called Am I Wrong Though? And so the whole point of this really is to actually hear some real stories, some stories that would be happening out in the world. Theo and I won't know the story ahead of time. So our producer, Tony, is working his magic back there, and you're going to get our real-time reactions on the story, because it's one thing to have these ideas, theology even, theoretically, right? But then you put it to a real story, and then all of a sudden, where do those strands lie? So that's what we're going to start doing every episode. And so we want to invite you into something. We want you to go ahead and send us your Am I Wrong Though stories, because you know the ones we're talking about. You did something and maybe you feel like maybe there's a little question mark gray area. We want to hear from you. So email them to us, and maybe we'll be able to use them in one of our episodes.
All right, so let's dive right on in. Let's start this conversation. When we talk about how to fight, conflict resolution, arguments, right? The first thing I gotta say is that every relationship is gonna have some fights, right? Here's where we run into some of the tension, some of the confusing things that we gotta flesh out, we gotta wrestle through. Is that the Bible does talk about it. A lot of people feel like the Bible doesn't address a lot of things, and it does. You just gotta look for it. You gotta study for it, and we're not gonna be able to break into it right now at this segment. But I just want to carry us through a couple of the spaces where the Bible talks about some conflict resolution. All right, one of them is in Matthew chapter 5. And in Matthew chapter 5, you get Jesus talking about the Beatitudes. He talks about blessed are the peacemakers, right? And so there's this idea in our brain of like, oh, like everything's about peace. Everything, we get down to, verse 38 through 42, and he starts talking about, well, you've heard it said, an eye for an eye, but now I say, if they ask you to walk a mile, walk with them for 2 miles. And if they slap you, turn the other cheek, right? You get to Matthew 18, where Jesus is talking through some conflict resolution stuff there. And Peter comes to him and says, well, how many times should I forgive? And he says, well, 70 times 7. Peter's like 7 times? 7 times? And Jesus is like, no, 70 times 7. And this is where it starts to really hurt. Like this idea of how in the world am I supposed to deal with or walk through this in real time? So I got to ask you, Max, when it comes to conflict, how did you grow up viewing it? How did you get through it?
Yeah, so for me, I think I grew up in a space that felt like there was a lot of conflict all the time. In part because of my culture. We're very expressive people. I'm Puerto Rican. And so we talk about things, and we talk with our hands, and we talk excitedly, right? And passionate. And all that stuff is true of the culture, but also just there were stressors growing up in my life. I've talked in the past before about my mom being a young mom, and, just the craziness that comes with that. And so I'm not a stranger to conflict by any means, but I think that what happened is as time went on, I came to realize that I actually fought really unhealthily. Like I didn't have any proper tools, right? Part of that, my personality too, but a lot of it's just defense mechanisms, right? So we all kind of pick up these styles of fighting, these styles of conflict really from whatever we saw growing up, either in I don't want to do that, so I'm going to go to the extreme other side, or I'm just going to repeat what I saw growing up. So for me and our family, we did, I'd say like my maternal, like my mom's side, my mom and I always were able to talk things through, even though we would get into blowouts and fights like that, as moms and daughters do sometimes, but we were able to like talk through them. Not the case with other members of the family, right? So they could talk around or about, a lot of sweeping under the rug. But I think my style of conflict was pretty confrontational. If something's bothering me and you did it, you're gonna know, right? And so I've grown a lot. I think Jesus has helped so much, thank God, a ton, and therapy and all of the things. But I still would say that I'm pretty confrontational in the way that I'm going to address something. I just take time now. So there's wisdom involved now. There's a softness that just did not exist before, because I want to, at the end of conflict now, maintain relationship or restore relationship, which I don't think I had that as an end goal when I was younger. How about you?
Well, I grew up, and I've probably shared this before on the podcast. My mom's saying to my father, I'll never forget, was, if something's wrong, you'll be the second one to know. She's like, I'm going to tell Holy Spirit, I'm going to pray about it, and then like I'm coming to talk to you about it.
So healthy.
And that kind of fostered that in our household. In fact, a saying that my parents would say to us as children, it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Yeah.
So they always said, come, talk to us, tell us the things that, that they were trying to break that generational curse, I'll say, of like, don't question me. I'm your mom. I'm your dad. Like, just do what I say, not what I do. Like they're trying to break some of those things. So they're like, yeah, come question us. If you see something that is wrong, then come ask us. And if we find out we're wrong, we will apologize to you. And it's like, wait, what? My parents will apologize to me? And it just broke some of those things. So I grew up with a relatively healthy view of conflict. Not saying I always saw it done right. Not saying I always did it right. But I recognized the value in talking. Yeah. And the older I got, the more people that I met, the more I realized how foreign some of that was, to just come right out and talk about it. And then I started realizing some of my own defense mechanisms. Because as long as you're in your bubble at home with family or with that set of friends you grew up with, sometimes you don't realize your own things. Yeah. So I started realizing some of my own things, and part of that for a while was what you talked about earlier, that going to the opposite extreme, right? Of like, I knew some people, my dad was more like of a dominant, this is what I say, and like, sure, we could question it, but like he was still going to stand 10 toes down on it until it was proven that like, oh, you were mistaken.
You're wrong. Yeah.
But he was like, and he was just very out front, very forward. So there were some spaces in my life that I realized I took the opposite approach, where it was just like, hang back, I'm gonna watch, I'm gonna scope it out. And that would oftentimes lead me to not speaking up enough. Like I knew what I had to say, and I knew, but it was like, I don't want to come off as like,
too aggressive.
Exactly. And, not to say my father was too aggressive, but there were some areas where he was
commanding.
Yeah. And it was like, I don't need to be that guy. Like, I just want to kind of be in the background. I just want to, and so it was interesting growing up and meeting different people, seeing some of those things about me, seeing some of the areas where I needed to push in and be the commanding person in the room, while still learning how to do that with grace and truth and all of that. So, man, I think overall, my general view of conflict and fighting was pretty healthy.
That's good.
But, man, it's one of those things where I feel like the older you get and the deeper you go and the more you grow, hopefully, you just get insights, you get changes, you get, so I don't feel like my view has changed since I was little, but I feel like how that plays out, the principle hasn't changed, the practice has been changing.
Yeah, it's hard because you're dealing with so many things in conflict, your own emotion, first of all, then you have your ego, right? You wanting to be right. And I think those things, it's really difficult to do, I think, if you don't have that understanding of like, I need to die to self in the conflict. I need to figure out, and there's a space for truth 100% of the time. Like that's how I say, like I love to be the one to be like, nope, this is what it is. But how I engage in conflict now a lot also has to do with who am I engaging with.
Yeah.
Right. So like the conflict has to be handled differently when it's a coworker versus a friend versus my family member, my mom or whatever, or my husband or my children who are younger. Right. They're toddlers. Like I'm not going to fight the same way all the way through. Right. But I think that there's some of us who have gotten like a really negative, I guess, word, because when we hear fight, that's actually negative connotations.
Yeah. I was actually doing marital counseling with a couple some months ago, and it was interesting to hear the two of them talk, you know, based on how they grew up and things like that. He said, we don't fight. And she said, yes, we do. She like in real time, like snapped her head around. She was like, yes, we do. And he was like, no, we don't. And they kind of like went back and forth for a minute. And then what was really interesting is when we pushed and really got into it, he grew up where fighting meant we're throwing blows, right? Yeah. Like, and then not just physically, yes, he grew up physically fighting, but then also he grew into a man who would say, I'm going to take that same approach emotionally, right? So he's like, if you get me there, I can't control what's going to come out of my mouth. Yes. And I quote, he said, when I argue and I'm at that place, I'm not arguing for any kind of reason, any kind of wisdom. He's like, I'm trying to hurt you. Yeah. Something you've said has upset me. And he's like, so I'm trying to hurt you, right? And then from her point of view, a fight to her was just like, we disagree. Yeah. We disagree. We go back and forth a little bit, and then we come to a conclusion. And so I just find it really interesting, people's different views of what fighting actually is, and then the different styles thereof.
Yeah. And this is why it's so important to have these conversations and discussions with the people that you have the closest, right? Because when you don't want to wait until the blow up happens to like discover all of these things, right? And of course you will through every fight. If you're doing it right, through every fight, you should grow. There should be every conflict. There is lesson and growth. And I actually think that there can't be growth without conflict. There has to be something. There are couples, sometimes we meet them and you know, they've been together 6 months and everything is perfect and I'm going to get married to this person because everything is right and everything's right. And I'm like, somebody's hiding something and there's going to be a big blowout and a big fight. And I'm so big on just like wait through the seasons at least. Wait to see all 4 seasons with somebody to see how they handle this, because it's so important to know how someone fights and how to fight fair, I think is really important, because otherwise we're just going to leave this like path of destruction. Yeah. And exactly kind of what you were saying, I was thinking about this because there's, you know, I deal with like a lot of women and talking through their relationships and stuff, and the amount of women who don't understand that the relationship they're in is actually abusive because they're coming from a household that was physically abusive. Yeah. So they're not seeing the weight of the words being sharp, cutting down, or on the other end of this, right? Because we're talking about extremes, but the avoidance, the shutout, the I'm not going to talk to you because I'm mad. And so I'm going to shut down for, you know, longer than is comfortable. It's okay to step away. I need a minute. I need to process. I'm too hot to talk. But going all the way to the extreme of like, I'm going to leave the house and I'm not going to talk to you for 2-3 days. Yeah. Like I hear that a lot. And that is a form of manipulation. And if it's done often in a pattern, it's a form of abuse. Yeah. And walking women through that and walking men through that too, of understanding like there's certain things, there has to be like ground rules in how do we fight, right? And the goal, because you mentioned like this guy said, okay, my goal is to injure. But like, why is that your goal? Yeah. Well, because I need to defend myself. And so it comes back to like, how are we viewing the person that we're having in the fight with?
I was just getting ready to say that a conversation that my wife and I have all the time, remind each other of like, hey, look, like it's not me versus you. Like I'm not trying to fight you. I'm on your side. We're trying to figure out the best way, not my way, not your way, but like the way that we should go forward. I oftentimes tell couples, and I'm pretty sure I've shared this on some previous episodes in season 1. Oftentimes we'll tell couple, couples to remember who you married.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's one of my biggest things. Remember who you married. Okay, take that out of the marriage context and just in your relationships. Remember who you're talking to. Like, this is your road dog. This is your best friend. This is your, and you got to remember, I know this about my friend, that they would never purposefully hurt me, right? They would never purposefully do this thing. So this brings me to my why. Why am I fighting? Not to injure, but I should be fighting to understand this person's point of view. I should be fighting to understand, okay, I said this thing and maybe you misunderstood it. So like, can we talk about the misunderstanding? This is what I actually meant when I said that. Or maybe I'm the one feeling hurt. Can we take a moment and just step back and let me try to ask myself, why do I feel hurt by what you just said, right? Just understanding the why. Like, why are we fighting right now?
And it's so important, kind of what you're mentioning here, but you have to understand who the person is that you're dealing with. And I think what happens is, again, depending on how you've been taught to deal with conflict, right? Some of us, we bank experiences. It's kind of how I am. I kind of navigate through conflict because my overcorrection, right, of like being a person who was like hot all the time, ready to, right, and be like, that's not good. So I have to go all the way to the other side, which is I'm not going to deal with the conflict in that exact moment. But sometimes what happens is that I'm banking, right? So it's like, I'm not going to speak up the first time it happens. I'm going to give you grace for the second time it happens. But now we're at the third time. And now what I've done, because I didn't address it when it was small, is I've spun this huge narrative around this person. And, I do, and I can walk myself out of it, but I do end up painting like a character or caricature of the person through the offense after it's been 1, 2, 3, 4 times that this thing is happening. And now in my head, all of a sudden I'm like, well, this person is just, this is just how they are, right? When of course I don't do that to myself, right? I can always understand why I'm reacting, right? For me, it's like, there's all this nuance and this gray, but for somebody else, it's like, so we do have to remember, right? Like long term, there's a level of accountability that has to take place, I think, within conflict for yourself. And I have to look at myself, like, why am I feeling these feelings right now? Why am I ready to blow up? Is it because I have held on to it for too long? I was just having a conversation with my mom this weekend, actually. And, my mom has been my, like, iron sharpening iron, but also like the thorn, and like we're each other's thorns. I think it's just like that hard relationship, right? And like there's a lot of good there, so please don't not hear that we have so much good in our relationship. But I think we've both caused each other to grow because of the kind of people we are, and there are similarities, but there's like a lot of differences. And so it's like sandpaper, like we rub, and so I was having a conversation with her, and she was just kind of talking about how some of the areas that she has overcorrected in her life because of the things that I have brought to her, and that she was kind of hurt by the stuff that I've said. Now, here's the dilemma, right? I need to say the things that I've said, right? Because they are true and they are hurtful, and if we don't address them, then it never gets resolved.
Right.
But back then, when I was communicating, I was a lot younger, and because I was banking experiences and stuff, by the time I got to her is because I hit critical mass. Right. And so now I am a blubbering mess and crying, and how could you do this? And this is just, just this whole like narrative. And then I leave her reeling, right? Was kind of what she was saying to me. And I just had to like listen in that moment because she's right. And so like I'm sitting there and I just like apologize. Mom, I'm sorry. Like I know that these conversations had to stop, but I didn't have the tools to do it in the right way. And she's like, oh, you don't need to apologize. Like, I know I don't need to apologize, but I do, right? Because I have better skills now. So when we were in a conversation, because I had to address something else coming up, and in that conversation, I had sat on that conversation for 3 weeks, not collecting, but trying to work through, praying about it. I met with my therapist about it. I talked to my husband about it. And by the time I got to my mom, the heat wasn't there. So I could actually come to her coolly and be like, hey, I do need to talk to this thing about you. My intention is not to hurt you or anything, but like we gotta talk about it. And I can understand your side even. I got to the place in my conflict and all of that imagination and stuff where I could see where she was coming from, but still need to advocate for myself. That's a healthier way.
Goal,
that's the healthier way. Now, do I do that every time? No. It's very hard to do, but this is the dying to self. And it was cool to be in that moment with her and be like, I don't want her to carry any scars because of how I said something, to your point earlier. And so I got to just remember that. Same thing with my husband. You know, the people that we spend the most time with is the people that we give the least amount of grace to and how we speak to them.
Something else that you were kind of getting at there is there's this balance that needs to take place as to, you use the word banking, right? Like the difference between banking and like, I don't know, going to the Lord, meditating. Like there's difference between the two. And this is something I'm learning in real time, because I'm the person that will notice every single little thing, like every single little thing. And I've got to go to the Lord to figure out, am I banking these things and getting to the critical mass like you were talking about, where I'm ready to explode? Or am I allowing Holy Spirit to show me, you're not banking this, but I'm going to show you that this really isn't a big deal. So like, don't hold on to it. Don't chalk it up for, okay, it's another time you did this or said this, or there's just these moments where Holy Spirit, if you allow him, will actually show you like, this isn't what you thought. Like you're actually seeing it wrong, or you're approaching it wrong. And then the balance of that, when also to still go and talk to the person. Because as we've been saying this whole time, the conflict is actually needed and healthy. Any relationship that doesn't have any conflict isn't really going to grow.
I can tell the difference in my head too when I'm banking for banking's sake versus like I'm holding on to so that I can process it, and like where my brain space goes. I don't know if anyone else is out there like this, but when I'm banking, I'm also ruminating. So like I'm continuing, you know, we that word ruminating comes from like, even like we think about the cows that are eating and they're constantly chewing the same piece of grass over and over. And like when you do that, it just becomes like a nasty, sloshy mess. That's exactly what happens in our thoughts, right? So and so when I'm banking, I'm not addressing it right now, but you better believe I am chewing that thing over and over and over. And I have to catch myself, right? Because in an anxious space, that's where the thoughts become really dark, right? And so the opposite end, when I know that I just need to deal with this, but I'm not going to address it right now, there's a level of like, let me turn the object and let me try to look at it from their angle and this angle. And is there something I could have missed? And like the posture entering in is different. Yeah.
That's good. Real quick, I want to take us to a piece of scripture and kind of walk through it a little bit. Because like I said, scripture does address this. The first one I'm going to go to is Matthew 18. All right. And here in Matthew 18, Jesus is teaching, preaching like he always does. Where are we? In verse 15, he says, if your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over. But if they will not listen, take 2 or 3 others along, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. Then verse 17 says, if they still refuse to listen, tell it to the church. And if they refuse to listen, even to the church, treat them as you would a pagan or a tax collector. And what's really interesting here is we can take these same rules and apply them to, you know, if someone offends you, right? I think some translations even say that. But I find it interesting here that it says, if your brother or sister sins, right? And so there's this similarity in how we handle sins in the church and personal offenses here. And it's clearly laid out here that the first thing is to go to the person, right? And I think that's the first part of conflict that we need to realize is, to one, the difference between the ruminating, as you said, the chewing on the same stuff, versus praying on it, meditating, figuring out. But then after that, it's not go to this person and talk about, you know, oh, you'll never believe what she said to me or what he did or blah, 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 blah. It's going to that person. And I love here that it's for me, we need to do some research, but I've always read this as universal, right? It's not just your family members. It's not just, this is a brother or sister, right? So this is somebody that you know, somebody that you look at who has offended you in some way. And it says the first thing you should do is go to them and talk to them. And then if that doesn't work, then you go back and bring some others. How often have you actually seen this play out in your lifetime?
So I'm going to I'm going to push because I'm a stickler for words, you know.
Okay.
When I look at that, I don't look at it universally.
Okay.
I do look at it as a model of conflict within church because it starts and ends there. It's a brother and sister in Christ. And then the last authority there is the church, right? So if it's somebody who doesn't go to church, how would you bring it to church? And
so I'm talking about the first step of going to the person.
Yeah. So this is my little hiccup. Here's my little hiccup. And I'm operating at a complete bias.
Okay.
I'll put that out first.
Fair.
I think for some people, if you have a history of overreacting, I think it's wise to have someone you trust help you read the situation you're in. Because then you become the person who is easily offendable and having talks with every single person in your life because you're easily offendable. So in general, is it good to go to the person directly? Yes. However, there has to be a level of assessment of what is going on with this issue. Is it even something that I need to bring up? Right?
For sure.
For me, there's instances where I have literally felt crazy and like, did this person really do this? Am I seeing this wrong? And I can't trust my initial first judgment. So if my first go-to would be to talk to the person, I don't know if the conversation would have ended well.
That's fair. What I'm getting at is there's a big difference between, hey, check me on this.
Yes.
And gossip.
Oh, yes. Okay, that line.
That's where I'm getting to.
Yes.
Is the difference between me going to someone and being like, oh, you'll never guess what, blah, 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 and never going to that person. And for me, like I said, I understand that Jesus is saying a brother or sister, and then, as you said, how can it start and end in the church if that person's not even a believer? Paul even speaks of this about, those in the church. I get that. I'm saying this first step of going to the person rather than going to everybody else and never even addressing it. Yeah. I find, strong word, I find cowardice. If I'm willing to, now again, big difference between going to one, maybe two people, hey, check me on this because I'm not sure about my feelings here. However, I've seen people go to 3 and 4 and 6 and then never even go have that conversation.
Yes, that I disagree with 100%.
And I have a big problem with that.
Yeah, okay.
I've seen it take, and I've even seen it take place in the church where it's like talking about this one person, got everything bad to say, you'll leave the church, you'll leave that small group, whatever it is. And I'm like, no, that's not okay. Like, not even just within the church. Like, that's not okay. We never get anywhere if we can't have conversation. Yeah. Right. But how many times have you seen within the church this actually play out and go well?
I don't know, because, and I'll tell you this why. Because if it went well, then we don't hear about it. Right? If it went well that I went and had the conversation one-on-one with the person, then the rest of the people don't know that the incident happened, right? Yeah. So I have to imagine that is the case, that of course that's happened, that people have had issues and they were able to clear it up on their own. I think it's less likely to happen because we don't have the proper tools to learn how to deal with conflict. I think most people feel insecure about how to deal with problems. I think that is the majority of people, right? It's uncomfortable. I don't know how to feel right now. I don't know, blah, blah. So most likely I'm going to go to other people first before dealing with the situation. Now, whether the intention of going to other people is to gossip or just to get wisdom, that's a heart situation, a posture situation. But I think if it happens, we don't know about it. I think for myself, I can think of times where I did go directly to the person to talk, and a lot of times it was like misunderstandings. The church that I came from was like a high responsibility culture, and so you were really expected to like have those hard conversations with folks. So it was more accepted, I guess, or like just part of our flow. Like, hey, let's have a chat. Let's go to coffee. Hey, can we talk about this thing and whatever? And so like that kind of environment for me works really well. I love being direct. From there, the church that I came to right before here was the complete opposite. They were very conflict avoidant. And so you would not actually hear about anything until it was too late, until somebody's fired or gone or whatever the case may be. And so there I had to learn how to, and I didn't do it successfully, I'll say. I did not learn successfully. But they were very big on the compliment sandwich.
Okay.
Which, for those of you who, for whatever reason, haven't heard, it's like you give the compliment and then the thing that you want to get at, the correction, and then another compliment. Well, there it was like, let me give you 10 compliments. I'm going to sneak this thing in halfway, sideways, and then 10 more compliments. And you're like, okay, like nothing's wrong then, and so you kind of miss it. So I don't know. I mean, I think there's, obviously it's biblical, so I think it works. But if it works, we don't hear about it. And so we should hear about less. I think we should be a space where we hear about less. There should be less places of us hearing about offense. 1, because we're handling it properly. 2, because we should just be a little bit more unoffendable.
That's a whole podcast right there. The offense culture and how everything is out to get you.
Yes.
Everything is, you're coming against me. You're coming against what I feel. All of that. Okay.
I have one more thing before you jump off here.
Okay.
Because we were, right before we got on the mic, we started talking about the 5 styles of conflict.
Yes.
So I want to bring this up because in case you're like, okay, what is mine or what I think? So this is like a tool that's used like in HR to figure out, within teams and stuff. But I think you can take it and apply it to like your personal life, to your family life, to church life, all of that. So here are the 5 styles of conflict. So the first is to collaborate. The second is to compete. The third is to avoid. The fourth is accommodate. And the fifth is compromise. Okay, so
walk us through those.
Yeah, let's go through them. So for collaborate, obviously that's a win-win. We're both coming to the table. We're both going to find a way to win in this situation. And that really requires having the same goal, right? I think about collaboration a lot of times when I'm actually fighting with my husband because we're trying to get to the same place, right? We have the same goal in mind. So it's easy to come to a place where, we're going to argue, we're going to talk about, but our end goal is to collaborate. I'm trying to find a way that he can win and that I can win and that it's the most successful, right? The second one is compete, which means I want to knock you out. And you're going to know I'm right. And this is where I think that my natural self operates. And when I think about conflict, I want to win, right? This is something I have to like walk myself back from. So I win, you lose. Avoid means we both don't deal with it.
Yeah.
You're going to go that way. And so ultimately that means, although we think we both win, we actually end up both losing really because the problem is there. And then we have accommodate, which means that I'll yield so that you can win. This is a tricky one because it sounds good, but depending on what we're yielding on can have really bad fruit, right?
That, and eventually you start banking.
Yes, and you can start banking.
I yielded to you there, and now I'm mad about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you want to collect, right? You want to come back and collect. Well, I did all these things for you, so like, okay. And then lastly, we have compromise, which is we both win, but we also both lose. So we're both giving something up, but we're both getting something we want out of there. So if you're looking at those 5, where do you think you like land most of the time?
Man, I think I'm more on the collaborative side. In fact, literally just last night, me and my wife were talking about laundry. And what we've done is we've come up with a schedule, right? These amount of days, you have unlimited access to washer and dryer. These couple of days is where like I personally want to wash like my gym clothes and this and this and this. And so like my schedule's a little bit different than hers. And then also currently she's a stay-at-home mom. So it just makes sense. Like while I'm out of the house at work and she gets done whatever she wants to get done. And then on the weekends I'll do the stuff that I want to do, especially differently. And it works most times, right? And so last night I was like, hey, I see that, we're a little bit behind on some of the towels, some of the linen. So I was like, how can I best help, right? And so we get into this conversation there. And what my goal is to come in and say, how can I best come in and help fix this thing? Not necessarily, and I said this, not necessarily like do it my way. I will present a plan and then like that's just on the table. I'm not saying do it this way. I'm saying, hey, here's a plan. Now let's tweak it so that it does still work with your schedule, your flow, all that. So I like to approach things with the collaborative mindset. If I'm not getting anywhere with that, it is easy for me to go into the compete where it's just like my way's better. My way's obviously, like, my way's better. You're not bringing anything to the table here.
Yeah.
So, like, we're going to do it my way.
Yeah.
So I will say naturally the compete is in me,
Yeah.
but I try to frame it and start with the collaborative. If my wife were here, she'd probably say the compete comes out a lot.
Yeah.
Because I'm a generally quick talker, not in the sense of like saying whatever comes to my mind, but like I know what I think about this thing,
Yeah.
and then I can articulate it right there. My wife, which we said on the last season, she's more of a verbal processor. So in the conversation, she's figuring out how she feels about it, what she thinks about it, right? And so if I come already prepared,
You've got the ammo.
Yeah. And she's like, whoa, chill, you know? And so I like to land, whether or not we start in the middle, I like to land on this collaborative thing, because to me, I hate the idea of what we were talking about, the last one, the accommodating.
Yeah.
Which is just like, sure, whatever you say, whatever you say. Like, I'm not going to be that guy. It just says whatever you say. And I don't want to be with someone who's just a for lack of a better term, yes man, you know, or yes woman. I just can't stand that.
Yeah. And I think we end up producing that though, right? Like if we are heavy compete people and there are people in our life that are like tied to us, and I'm particularly thinking family, because friends have the ability to walk away if they don't like something, even in workspaces, but like someone like a spouse, right, or a child, and you're heavy and compete, I'm heavy and compete, we can tend to produce people who are heavy and accommodate, right? And because they just don't want to put up with the whatever, because we are so quick and we have the plan and we have all the resources, and so it's something that we have to watch, but also even encourage the opposite, encourage the, hey, like something I've gotten used to saying, especially with new people that I'm around, is like, hey, sometimes I speak really directly and it sounds like what I'm saying is fact, but that's just like how I communicate. It's not fact. Yeah. Like I actually love being challenged. I actually love seeing things in a different way. And you're not going to offend me because you have a different opinion, but I'm just going to communicate directly because that's just my style of talking.
Pastor Mike's phrase, which I've adopted now, is I'm speaking in absolutes, but I don't mean this in absolutes.
Yes, exactly.
You know, because he will get in a meeting and he'll be like, what we should do is, and then he'll be like, wait. Like, I don't mean this in absolutes. It's just, you know.
An idea.
Right.
Yeah.
And
but this comes with self-awareness. So much of how to fight, you have to have your starting point. You need to know yourself. Yeah. Like you have to. There's no way around this, right? Because you have to know where your starting ground is so that you can have that balance, right? Again, we tend to operate in extremes all the time. That's what feels comfortable. So this thing didn't work. I grew up with somebody who, you know, avoided all conflict. So now I'm going to talk about everything. Or I grew up with somebody who was, you know, quiet all the time. So, I mean, or the other way around, yelling all the time. So now I'm going to shut down. And that's the best way to deal with conflict. When really it's always coming back to the middle. We have to find those things that, one, that are important to fight about, what's worth fighting for. Coming back to this verse, you know, it's talking about sin. And to me, one of the first questions that I'm asking in this regard is what's going on sin? Is it even sin?
Right.
Or is it just they're not doing something to my preference? Yeah. Well, I need to approach that conversation completely differently. But what happens is if we're all feeling all emotion and I just feel something and we don't know how to feel, sometimes what happens is like you feel something and you don't want to feel it. So you just want to like throw it to somebody else. Yeah. And that's what happens a lot. We end up vomiting on someone or something, the wrong person sometimes, a lot of times the wrong person. And so we have to control that. Yeah. We have to come back, fruits of the spirit, right? One of those is self-control. Self-control. That's one of those things. And it's perfect to bring into this space of conflict. Like, am I still within a fight exhibiting the fruits of the spirit? Yeah. And it's not like a be all end all, but it's a place that we should be working towards, right? Yeah. It's a goal. Like, man, I really messed up that fight. How can I do it better next time?
Something that is slightly off topic, but not really. I listened to this podcast called the Bema Discipleship Podcast, and they just break down scripture. Like, that's really what it is. They just teach, and they from a heavy Jewish standpoint. Like, they're like, okay, like it was Hebrew Jewish people who wrote it, and so now let's talk about like the frame of mind that they would have written this in. It's really interesting. So when they break down the creation story in Genesis, you know, they get to this point where they talk about a God who knew when to stop creating, right? And so they talk about sixth day, everything's good, and then he takes a rest and talks about how, you know, just this moment where God kind of looks and says like, it's good. Like, it's very good. Like,
Mhm.
that's enough, right? Then it gets to the flood story, and it talks about how mankind was sinful, evil, says that every thought was an evil thought.
Mhm.
And a lot of times people look at the flood story and they're like, especially if you're not a churchgoer, it's like, oh my God, like God just wiped everybody out.
Mhm.
But it talks about, and I'm going to butcher it, so you're just going to have to go find the episode for yourself. But it talks about how the focus was not just on the destruction and everything that happened. There's also this moment when Noah comes out and he sees the rainbow. It's actually a symbol, and they break down the symbol
Mhm.
and what it would have meant to Noah back then. But it talks about the God who knew when to stop
Mhm.
destroying,
Mhm.
right? So there's this picture of self-control all throughout the Bible. You see this in Exodus with the children of Israel when
Mhm.
they were rebelling against God. Like, he really could have, and he threatened it a couple of times, just
Yeah.
kind of snap his finger. But there was this self-control of like, how far to go. And so in our conversations, in our arguments, that's should be a constant question of like, how far to go.
Yeah.
There needs to be conflict.
Mhm.
And the person who is bringing the conflict needs to ask themselves, how far is too far?
Yeah.
Like, what button should I not push? What
Yeah.
things should I not bring up? I should not be saying you're just like your mother. Like, there's certain things I should not do, but I do need to point out that characteristic that her mother might share
Mhm.
and say like, hey, like, this is not good between the two of us. I need to know how far is too far.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's something that's pretty much missing.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And again, but like, how do you do this without torching people along the way?
Mm.
That's the thing, because part of this is having at bats at conflict to get better, like you were saying, because we don't know how far is too far. We don't know how we're perceived in a fight unless we have the fight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But being able to be corrected in that, I think is really huge. I also want to bring up the fact that, because we started at the top of this with just all this tension, right? Because there's some scriptures that say, turn the other cheek, and how many times do you forgive? 70 times 7. And like, what do we do? And I can't remember if this is you that said it in another episode, so I might just be quoting you. but just like, wisdom is found in the tension. Like, it's not found, again, in those really extremes. And I was thinking about a story in the Bible. It's a really rough story. Like, I actually hate it. It burns me up every time I read it. But I think it's showing, now that I'm thinking about all this, it's showing something really important. There's a story of David and Absalom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I guess David, Absalom, and I forget the
daughter.
The daughter,
yeah,
of course. But in this situation, I look at that as a situation in which a parent should have gotten involved, but decided to avoid the conflict because they didn't want to take sides. And in this particular story, there was a wrong side, a very clearly wrong side, right? So I don't know how familiar everyone is with the story, but basically one of David's son fell in lust with his sister.
Yeah.
And he's overcome with this lust and all this stuff, and essentially, long story short, decides to rape her. And as soon as he does the act, he becomes disgusted with her, so he won't follow even the cultural guidelines, which say that you would then have to marry her.
Right.
So poor girl is literally left for nothing. She'll never be able to get married again because she's been defiled. She'll never be able to have a normal life. We now know all of the crazy things that happen after sexual abuse. So she's going through all of this.
Yeah.
And in a time where her father should have protected her, he's in the castle hiding somewhere. He doesn't want to deal with it. And even when it's brought to him by his other son, who's infuriated, rightfully so, nothing happens. And because he does not want to get involved. His conflict style here is avoidant.
Avoidance, yeah.
But David is not an avoidant personality. David, in this situation, he's gotten here because he's overcorrected from his own previous trauma, from getting involved and from fighting the fight and all that stuff, and seeing that, okay, I did it wrong, so let me do something different here. But what happens is he does not stand up in the story. He doesn't do what's right. He avoids the conflict, thinking, I don't know, it'll just go away. There's no comfort. In fact, the only thing that he really mourns is the brother who did the act. He feels bad for him.
Once he's killed, yeah.
Right? And I think about that too, like, why? Well, there's a bit of self-awareness that's not there with David. David is seeing a little bit of himself in his brother, right? Because the brother essentially does the same thing that David did. right? He went and
Bathsheba. Yeah.
so we're seeing the same kind of sin back to back, and so we make excuses for it. We need to be careful in our families of this, what we excuse generationally because we've been through it.
Mm-hmm.
We have to have a firmer stance, not an extreme stance, but a firmer stance in these generational patterns that happen in my family, so that I can cut them. Because when we don't address them, what happens in this story is then the other brother ends up killing the other brother. Now we have death, and then that brother ends up hunting David down. It's this whole mess that happens all because someone didn't want to handle the conflict properly, who was in the authority and the best authority to handle it. So again, I come back to like, who are we fighting? Why are we fighting? What's the authority in the fight? Do we need to get involved in situations? We need to ask ourselves all of this. It becomes more complex than just how am I feeling in this moment? And like I'm saying all of this, having had so many trial and errors, right? Again, I don't always do this correctly, but there are times where I do it and I won, not the argument, but how I did it. And I'm like, hey, I'm proud of myself. I did that the right way. And there are times that I'm like, dang, I didn't do that the right way.
And man, I'm just thinking about words like justice and when it being right. And when I think about that, what just came to mind, and I'm real time processing, so don't destroy me in the comments. But what comes to mind is this idea that justice that you revel in is revenge in some cases, and I'll just say wrong in general. So for instance, even if I'm bringing the right point of view to this argument, if I'm enjoying destroying you in this argument, if I'm destroying, picking apart your argument and all the ways that what you're saying is wrong, if I'm enjoying that, like there's something wrong with my heart there, even if I'm saying the right things. And so it's this idea. What got me here is the thought of David, right? He's looking at his family. He's looking at a civil war that's about to break out, and then quite literally even closer than that in his family. And that being said, I'm sure it grieved his heart to see this happening. And nobody says that you're supposed to be happy about standing up for what's right. Nobody says you're supposed to be happy about, setting these boundaries or going into conflict, but it needs to happen. I don't, again, back to the Noah story, back to all the plagues, everything that God does that people would look at and say like, that's evil, that's wrong. I don't believe God sits up there and is like happy about, having to punish or having to set the line of being here. And I think the same way in our arguments and our conflict, being able to say like, no, this is truth, or like, hey, like you've offended me in this area. I'm not going to back down in the sense of just, okay, whatever you say. I'm not going to avoid it, but I'm also not going to be the competitor and like be excited to beat you at this argument. That balances everything.
And I think, and we can look at this and even put it into other spaces, Christian spaces. I'm thinking, so I love apologetics, like love it, right? And for those of you who are not aware, it's a defensive Christian faith. And so I love watching videos of professors. I love watching street videos, stuff like that. Part of the reason is because I had all these big questions coming in and didn't find a space to answer, but like, what about this hard question, right? But as you become equipped with knowledge and as you become equipped more scripture and more stuff, like we have to watch ourselves and how we navigate conversation spaces, because again, it comes back down. Am I trying to win the argument or am I trying to win souls? That's a different posture coming in. So we have to watch ourselves with even the way that we evangelize, with the way that we disciple, with the way that we do apologetics, like all of those things. We have to watch what the end goal is, almost kind of repeat it daily. Like, this is what I'm here to do. And really just to die to self. It really comes back to that. How do you fight? You die to self, but still standing up for truth and for what's right. I think there is a way to meet that in balance. We need wisdom. We need other people sometimes. The other thing in that scripture that you had read earlier in Matthew 18 was that there is a space where there is a time in a conflict to walk away. And I think that's the other area that we struggle in.
Oh yeah, we're gonna dive heavy into this topic and actually in our next episode. But there is this space where, and Jesus even tells his disciples this, you got to shake the dust off your sandals, right? Like, there's just not much you can do here. It's a hardening of the heart. It's a and sometimes it's legitimate things that you see. And again, one of those areas where you're not excited to be like, oh, I'm cutting you out of my life. It breaks your heart because you can see that's childhood trauma that's not worked out.
Mm-hmm.
And this person doesn't know
Mm-hmm.
how to have, good conflict. This person doesn't know how to, but there is a space, we just read it, where he says if they refuse, especially within the church, if they refuse to even listen to the church and the church leaders, like there's nothing you can do there.
Yeah. And there's a difference. And I want to say this because some of you I know are in fights within your family. And I think that's probably the hardest to navigate of all things, right? And there's a space of, particularly like if you're a Christian and someone in your family is not Christian, how do we navigate certain things like that? Like that, it becomes so difficult and so touchy to deal with those things. And I think there has to be a space where I can be me and hold my set of convictions and create space that someone else is not there yet. Because for me, it's a yet, because I know every knee will bow. Yeah. Right. And so if I keep that in my mind, there's less of a pressure and anxiety as I'm trying to speak to people. But there's a difference, I think, in I'm thinking a very personal example, which I'm not going to go into detail with right now, but like, the offense is there because of a boundary that was put up. The boundary was necessary, but the offense is still there. Yeah. Yeah. Right. And so that on that person's end, the person receiving the boundary, I'm evil because how dare I? Yeah. Right. On my end, this is absolutely what I needed to do. Yeah. And I still love for that person. I still pray for that person, but the boundary has to be set. Otherwise, it's going to create an enablement of behavior that is not right. Yeah. Right. And so we have to do that. How do we do that? But that doesn't mean I need to go around talking badly about this person to everybody and da da da. Like, I'm not doing that. It's just my boundary's going to hold. And I have to then be comfortable with being the bad guy. Yeah. Am I comfortable with being the villain in somebody's story? Well, it sucks because I really love this person, but I've got to be the villain. Yeah. So. All right, I'm anxious, y'all. I'm never gonna lie, because I don't know what story we're gonna be reading today, what we're gonna be responding to. Yeah. Antonio's over there smiling right now, cooking something up. He's about to destroy my world. So for those of you that don't know, Max and I had a conversation before we started season 1, and I was telling her, growing up, not growing up, but like over the last 11 years now that I've been working in church work. Getting more used to preaching, teaching, things like that. I told Maxine, I told her, I have grown a little more comfortable with monologue, meaning I can get up on a Sunday morning, I can preach a sermon, I can teach a lesson, I can do these things, and Holy Spirit uses it. It's great. However, real-time conversation is on camera especially is just weird for me, right? And so lo and behold, season 2, the team's like, we should do live reactions and make you guys react to these stories. So I am anxious in a good way. I'm excited. And let's see, the next voice you'll hear will be our producer, Tony. Well, yeah, I want to preface this before Tony comes on. So we're calling this segment, Am I Wrong, Though? Okay. Yes. It might sound familiar to something else that that we're not going to say because we're a good Christian podcast. But this is our Am I Wrong Though segment. Kick it off, Tony. We're all ears.
Okay, perfect. You guys can hear me though, right?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. That's all we need. Okay, here's the story we have. Okay. I'm a Christian and I work in a leadership role. A close friend of mine recently asked me to help them get a job at my organization. They're incredibly gifted, charismatic, and will probably be great at the work. Here's the problem. I know things about their private life that directly contradict the values we hold publicly. I'm not talking about normal human messiness. I'm talking about repeated patterns of dishonesty, manipulation, and a tendency to spiritualize their behavior when confronted. When they asked me to recommend them, I hesitated. I didn't tell them everything I was thinking, but I said I couldn't, in good conscience, put my name behind their application right now. I told them I'd be happy to help them prepare, pray with them, and talk honestly about growth, but I wouldn't advocate for them yet. They were devastated. They told me I was being judgmental, that God uses broken people, and that I was acting more like a gatekeeper than a Christian. They also said I was holding them to a higher standard than myself. Now our friendship is strained. Part of me wonders if I confused discernment with control, or if I used wisdom, in quotes, as a shield to avoid discomfort. But another part of me feels like trust is also a spiritual issue, not just grace. Am I wrong, though?
What a story. Okay, first, my short answer, I might disagree. Am I wrong, though? In short, no. I would not advocate for that person to jump into a position that they're not ready for spiritually. Like, that's the first thing that pops into my brain. Okay, let's take the friendship out of it. And I grew up with a really high reverence for church work. And I understand that we're all human beings, all that kind of stuff. I hate when people like worship the pastor or anything like that. But I do know that God called us to do, it's going to feel weird, but sacred work in a way, right? That being said, even though none of us are perfect, there's still this line of like, there needs to be growth. There needs to be forward movement. So am I wrong, though, for not recommending this person for the job? I would say no. Am I wrong, though, for the not directly telling them these things? So I know people from the past, not currently, but I know people from the past who very clearly, very blatantly worked in ministry and was out here, I'll just put it this way, running in them streets, right? And there's part of me is like, bro, how do you sleep at night? Like, how do you, like, I would be scared God is going to strike me down. And then there was this other part of me that looked at this person's leaders who I knew, but like didn't ask because they didn't really want to know. And it's like, you gotta ask these questions. Like, you don't get to avoid this thing, right? Especially as leaders. And so now, years later, myself jumping into leadership, I hear my own in the back of my mind. It's our job to address these things. So in short, am I wrong for not recommending this person? I'd say no. But I do feel like there was a bit of the avoidance in there, saying, I'll help you prepare and I'll pray. And I don't know this person's heart. So if you're watching, please don't think I'm assuming your heart behind it all. But it can feel a little bit scared to just be like, oh, I'll pray with you. I'll help you prepare. What does that entail? Yeah. If you're actually willing to help them prepare, it would mean going to them saying, hey, look, like these are some things that.
These are some flags.
Yeah, like these are some things that are not going to fly. I'm anxious to hear your answer, though.
Can you clarify for me? Is this person trying to work at a church or just like an organization? Can you bring back that beginning part?
Yeah. I'm a Christian and I work in a leadership role, and they just want to get a job at. Their friend wants to get a job at their organization.
Okay, so it doesn't clarify if it's a church or not.
It does not, no.
Okay,
my brain went straight to church, so I apologize.
Yeah, no. So for me, if it was a church thing, I think to me, to say that there's not extra weight at working at a church, I think is us being dishonest.
To say what?
That there's not extra weight, like extra standards.
I thought you said to say there is being dishonest.
No.
We're going to have a different conversation on this podcast.
Yeah, the only thing that is specified is that their friends' habits and things contradict the values the organization holds publicly.
Got it.
Okay. Yeah. Got it. Okay. So we don't know if this is a Christian organization, so we'll take spirituality out of it. Go ahead, answer.
Okay. First of all, I take recommendations pretty seriously. So I don't want anything attached to my name that could potentially jeopardize anything that I'm recommending to, right? That might be my ego talking, but it's true. Like if I'm going to recommend you to a job, it's because I really feel in good conscious effort that you're going to crush it. Now, here's the thing. If it's not a church, I think, okay, this is why it's so tricky. So for me, I think that I would probably have a conversation with my leadership and say, hey, my friend is applying. And just so you know, I think that they would be able to do a great job in terms of the job's sake, but there are some things in their personal life that could potentially be contradictory, and let them do the job of interviewing properly, right? Because there's a level of discernment that leadership might have, whatever. I think that they have to have a conversation with the person, and I'm kind of with Theo here, that if I'm already going to just say no, then I need to say why. I can't just be like half here, like, oh, I just don't feel comfortable. Like, Sometimes you just have to have a conversation with people. And then my question is, if the person is okay enough to be a friend and a close friend at that, then their personal stuff is not enough to get in the way of your friendship, then why is it enough to get in the way of a job?
Yeah.
Right? And so I would have some questions around the friend's other potential motives that might not be clear and might not even be clear to them. I'm not saying they're trying to be malicious, but just like.
So, okay. So, man, now we got to start jumping into the definitions of friendships, right?
Okay.
Because like there are friendships that you have that are, you know, I have this friend who's Muslim, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like we both know where each other stand. We're still good friends and we'll talk and we'll have those conversations, but we talk and we have those conversations, right? Versus like, oh, I have a friend, like an acquaintance, right? So like how deep is this friendship is what comes to my brain when you said what you just said there.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the question I would ask. That's what we don't have information on. Like, how close is the friendship? How real can I get in it? All this stuff. It sounds like to me that there's some level of vulnerability and transparency because they know bad things about them, right? You don't just tell like a normal acquaintance, like, oh, by the way, and vice versa, because doesn't the friend say like they're being judgmental and they have skeletons in their closet too or something like that?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, that we're all broken and we all like struggle with things like that.
Yeah, I'm sure this person knows some stuff, some dirt, and looking at you like, you know what I mean? So if that's the case, it's difficult, right? Like, I think a conversation is the very first thing that you would be owed. Like, hey, tell me why. I'm the friend. I'm asking, hey, why do you want to work here? Like,
so correct me if I'm wrong, Tony, but the person who already works there, right? The person whose friend is asking them to get a job, this person is saying that their friend's personal lifestyle choices, opinions, all that kind of stuff are contradictory to the organization.
Yes, to the values that they hold.
Right. So to me, that's a difference in, I'll try to lay this out. To me, that's a difference in, I work for Jersey Mike's, right? I'm a high up employee for Jersey Mike's and I share all the same values as Jersey Mike's. However, every now and then I might enjoy a Subway sandwich, right? That's a big difference in that. And I secretly hate Jersey Mike's, right? Like my core beliefs, my core values do not line up with them, but I have the ability to do a job for them. For me, and this is just me, I am such a, like what I'm doing, I put everything into it. And so if I don't think your core beliefs line up with the mission here, whatever here is, I don't want you here. Like, and I'm not talking about the little things here or there. I'm saying if there are things in your lifestyle that are contradictory to our core values, things here, I just don't see a world where you're going to be able to actually work without that bleeding into. That's just me personally. I don't see that able to happen on a deep level.
Yeah. Well then, but this is why then I feel like the responsibility really is on the person hiring for the job and not the friend, right? At the end of the day, it's the hirer's job, whatever, their discernment that needs to have the final say here, not the friend. But if the friend doesn't feel comfortable writing a recommendation letter, then they should not write a recommendation letter. That's fine, right? But for them to be like the, I guess, be all stop end, I think is not right. Because when I started working at Cold Stone, to use your Subway example.
Lore in there.
Yeah, if you want to sponsor us, Cold Stone. But when I first started working at Cold Stone, I actually did not like ice cream. I hated ice cream. You would never guess it because I love ice cream now. Working at Cold Stone made me an ice cream lover, you know? So who's to say that working, you know, a person who doesn't necessarily agree but then begins to work in the space, does it not have the ability to, once they're surrounded by this kind of environment all the time, maybe it helps them become more of that, right? I come back to the piece though that this person is your friend to begin with. And if the organization is what it is, why does a friend want to work there? So I would be asking the friend a ton of questions before a recommendation. Like, tell me why. This is what our organization believes, right? Like, I thought you don't really agree with that. Like, how are you going to feel working there?
Yeah.
Like, I would ask those kinds of questions before even venturing off into the whole, like, I'm not doing this because look at your life and blah, blah, blah. I think that was probably the wrong way to go in that stance. But ultimately, you don't want to write a recommendation, don't write a recommendation.
Wait, so I have a question. Why did you start working at Cold Stone if you don't like ice cream?
Because I needed monies.
But
They
you
were
could've worked
hiring.
somewhere that you liked something.
I don't know. It was just, I was walking by, they had a for hire sign. I needed a job, and it smelled amazing in there because you know what it smells like at Cold Stone.
I'm aware.
And I remember I went in and I wasn't dishonest about it. I mean, I remember meeting my manager. His name was Joe. He's from Brooklyn too, and it was like really cool because I was working in Boston, so we had a connection right away. And we started talking about the Yankees and just all this other stuff. He's like, I really like you, and I said, hey, I just have to tell you, I don't eat ice cream. He's like, no ice cream? And I was like, nope, don't like it. And he's like, okay. Well, I got a good feeling about you. And it just avoided, the thing altogether.
So there's just so many questions now because now just so many questions about the story, and we don't get all the details. We don't need all the details. But okay, so this, for the example you just gave,
Yeah.
I'm like, there's a difference between I don't eat ice cream and I believe ice cream is terrible because you're stealing the milk from the cows and the
Yes.
cows don't have a choice. Like
Yeah.
at that point,
Yeah.
you're not working for my ice cream company. Right.
Which is why I think it's important that the step that the friend should have done when the friend came and asked for the recommendation is like, tell me why you want to work here. This is the stuff that we believe. I know that you don't believe these things. Why would you want to work for a company that does these things?
Yeah.
That's where I would go. That would be my first step, as opposed to going to the person and just being like, no, I'm not doing this because I know how you live life and you ain't right, and so you can't be here.
So which conflict style would you say what you just suggested is?
Well, this is me looking back at my thing. I guess it's not one of these. It's another C though, which is curiosity, which I always come back to as my first step. I think if we can be curious about things, we can avoid a certain level of immediate blow up. And I think there were steps missed here because, again, what if the person was living like this, but now is like making a turn and you don't know that?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's so many questions to be asked before making the snap judgment of whatever the case may be. But it could just be the friend doesn't have all the information about the company that they're hiring. How many people have actually applied to a job and they didn't read the whole about page?
Oh yeah.
They don't read the about page until they get the second interview, right? Like, you know what I mean? So like there has to be some level of grace, I think, for that there. It sounds like this person is qualified for the job. That's not an issue of whether they can do the job,
Right.
but it's just my personal life is blah, blah. Now, the difference I would have is if this is a church and the personal issue that they are having is that they are stealing money from every other church job. If the personal issue that they're having is multiple affairs at every job that they've ever had, and now they're interviewing to work as a pastor. And okay, well, of course, those are details we don't have in the story.
Right.
But assuming that this is just a regular organization that just has some ideals, right? Think about maybe working for like Salvation Army, like a Christian adjacent organization or something, and they have certain things that they might believe in, and they don't fully. As long as they're not going to be contradictory to them in doing the job, it's fine. But there's something that's not being said on both sides, I think, of this story.
Yeah, where I just land in the grand scheme of things, I feel like as that person's friend, and that's kind of where I landed with my first answer. As that person's friend, it's your job to go to them and bring up these concerns. If I'm concerned about your life, why am I just now concerned about these things when you apply for the job? Right?
Exactly.
Like that's where I ask the question of like how many, like what do we define as friendship? How deep does this go? Right? If it's for a church, I should be concerned for your soul, whether or not you want to come work for the church or not. If it's an organization or whatever, it's a different story. It's hard for me to detach from the church thing because that's what I've dealt with. But yeah, I think it comes down to you have a responsibility to talk
Yeah.
to that person.
Yeah. I think also like we have to understand that in church is one space, right? Christians is one space, but the world operates completely differently, which is very transactional, right? I'll give you an example. This week I logged onto LinkedIn. I haven't been on in over a year. Like I just forgot about it, whatever. But I was trying to find somebody's last name. And the only place I knew to look was LinkedIn. So I was like, let me go see. Log on, and I see that I got a message a couple weeks ago from somebody that I went to college with, that I wasn't friends with, but like I knew, right? Like was in, and the person was just like, hey, I'm looking to apply for this job. I see that we have this connect in common. Would you mind reaching out to that person just to connect us, right? So not asking for a recommendation, but asking for like, oh, because you could easily on LinkedIn, you can message anyone you want. But this is the way networking works, right? I know you through I know you through I know you or whatever. It's a transactional kind of space. Because we're not clear what kind of environment this is, right? It feels different. It could be that the friend who asked for the help is looking at this as transactional, right?
Yeah.
Hey, you got the connect, give me the connect, right? Not looking to have all of the other stuff put in. But I don't know, could the friend be more aware, right? Like to me, maybe I'm being really harsh on the person who was asked to write the recommendation letter, but I just feel like you need to be the kind of person and live the kind of life that someone knows that they should not ask you for a recommendation letter if you're living a certain way and that you would be uncomfortable with it. To me, it shows that you're not necessarily living life out loud.
Interesting.
I do have one question that I kind of thought of, which will kind of lead to a second question depending on how you guys answer it, even though I think I know how you guys will answer it. Let's say someone is offended at you, but you know they're not ready to hear the reason. Like they're asking you for a reason, but you know that they're not ready to hear the reason, or you know they're going to react really bad. Like they're just not in it. I just want to know what you guys would do. Either one could go first.
I'll tell you this. They're never ready for the reason. There's no way to hear someone thinking less of you. There's no way. So like you can't have it be dependent on their readiness. And even if you do compliment sandwich and all that stuff, it can still backfire. The most that I can do is give you for what you asked, right? And try not to like, turn the knife as I'm saying it, right?
So I was literally just getting ready to say, I will ask them, what are you asking of me? Like, I just need to know. And then when it gets down to it, and it's not to be rhetorical, it's not to be like, okay, I got one in the chamber ready, but it's literally like, do you really want me to answer that? Like, do you really want my answer for this thing? And if you don't want my answer, I don't have to give it to you, right? There's a line, obviously. There's a line to which I will be a sounding board and I will listen to you and I will, but as soon as you say, what do you think? Do you really want to know? Right? And then at that point, we can get into it. And I'm going to be loving. I'm going to be, again, back to, it's not about, I take pride in telling them all the things that are wrong with them and all the things that are wrong with their point of view. And it's not that. It's just genuinely, if you're asking me for truth, I have to give you truth.
Yeah. The other thing we have to kind of, I guess, get comfortable or uncomfortable with, I don't know, but is we have a desire to be right, right? That is true. We have a desire to be right, but there's a greater desire than being right, which is I want them to know that I'm right. In any battle, and if you think about it, right? You want to be right, but more than being right, you want them to agree that you're right too. It's not just about you being right. And so I think in this case, this is where we lose in this scenario here, because I can be right about my assessment of this person's character, but I want them to agree with my assessment of themselves. And that's not going to happen here, right? It's going to be too defensive. It's going to be too whatever. The person's already indicated that they feel offense. So in that situation, I have to be okay, when I said before, with being the villain in the story if I'm going to go ahead with the truth, right? I have to be okay with potentially losing this friendship, even temporarily, even if it's just temporary. I have to be okay with that because, okay, I do the same thing. I'm like, you don't want to know what I think. Do you really want to know what I think? Okay, well, I'm going to tell you what I think. Like the preemptive kind of thing. And then, all right, like here it is. And I'm going to try to say it as nicely as possible.
Yeah.
But I have to let go of the control then that once it's out there, that person, 9 out of 10 is not going to like what was just said, because we all do that. No one likes hearing that they've dropped the ball. No one likes feeling like they are not the right person for anything, even if you're not, right? Like, you can even look at hiring practices, and you look at statistics and stuff that men will more likely apply for jobs that they have zero qualifications for over women, just because, like, no, I'll just do this. Why not? And because they don't want anybody telling them that they can't do something. And if you do try to say that, right? If I try to tell someone that was going right here, I try to tell a man who was born a man that now wears lipstick that he's still a man even if he wears lipstick, I've created a fence. Even though biologically everything that I've said is right. No matter how I say it, no matter how many times I'm ready to hear the truth, you're not going to like what I have to say because it just simply doesn't agree. So you have to be willing to risk, I think, in conflict.
Yeah, and that risk, here's the beautiful part, and you kind of alluded to it earlier, that when you said you don't know if that friend used to live that way and now there's a slight change, but like if you don't take the risk and the conflict, you might be thinking like, oh, like you're not going to be ready to hear this, and Holy Spirit could have been working on that person beforehand. Right. But if you don't take the risk and the conflict, you don't get to help confirm what Holy Spirit has been telling them in private, right? Like through your conflict, you get to then help confirm, or it happens both ways, right? Either Holy Spirit's working on them in private and then you come along and confirm, and they say, yo, like, out of nowhere, I was just thinking the other day, maybe I should stop living this way, right? Or the inverse happens. You have a conversation with them and maybe they aren't quite ready to hear it yet. They get a little attitude-y, they feel some kind of way, and then in private, Holy Spirit works on them. Yeah. But if you don't take the risk and the conflict and say, I got to tell you what I got to tell you, as nicely, as lovingly as possible, but I got to tell you this. If you don't take that risk, then, risk it for the biscuit. No risk, you don't get the win, right?
Okay. So to answer, am I wrong though? Kind of.
Big time.
Kind of. That's what. Am I wrong?
Kind of is
that our definitive answer?
For
not having the real conversation, I would say yes. For not recommending them, I would say no. I don't think you're wrong for not recommending them. If you can't in good conscience say, I get people all the time, some people that I know, previous students from youth ministry, who say, hey, Pastor Theo, can you write me a letter of recommendation? Boy, I ain't seen you in 10 years. Like, I don't know you anymore. So, on the questions that are asked, or if it's just, can you write me a blanket letter? It's 10 years ago, so-and-so was in my youth group. And from what I know, or from what I saw back then, or, that's all I can do. I'm not going to, in good conscience, be like, you should hire this person for this thing because they're awesome and I know them. So if you can't in good conscience, then don't. You're not wrong for that. But for not having the conversation with your friend, I would say you're wrong for that.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good.
Good. All right. So we're gonna pivot here to resources / where are we now?
Resources and some kind of call to action. Yeah. Like what do we do with everything we just talked about? I'm gonna recommend, for those of you who are new to season 2, I'm gonna recommend some stuff, or new to Between Sundays in general. I'm gonna recommend some stuff from season 1. First of all, Extreme Ownership is a book that I keep coming to a lot. Teaches you how to view yourself and what you can do in situations, not avoiding conflict, all that kind of stuff. Love Languages is another one. To get to know other people, because as I'm trying to figure out how I should not run from conflict, I should also know how to approach a conversation with somebody. And then I don't know if it's a book or if it's a study. What you were talking about, the 5
the
conflict styles.
Yeah.
I was sharing before we started recording. Max came to me and she was like, hey, did you ever hear about this? And I was like, I don't know. So she starts talking about it, and I said, yeah, I have heard about that. It was on The Office. Steve Carell starts talking about win-win situations, win-lose, lose-lose. He's just going through. Yeah. But whatever that study is just, it's gold. Yeah. People need to learn and assess themselves and assess those closest to them.
Yeah, that's good. For me, I'm thinking of 2 books, really. One is The Anatomy of Peace. I read this a long time ago. And the reason that it shook me a lot was, again, it would extreme ownership, right? It's an idea of what is my part to play in everything that I'm doing. And I remember it being something that was really formative in the way that I choose to view conflict and how I engage in conflict. And then another book is called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. I think that if you are emotionally healthy, then you fight better. And if you are constantly just spilling out everywhere, it's a sign that you're not healthy. No matter how much you feel like the world is against you and everything is attacking you and I mean, that is pure, listen to it from someone else. That is pure unhealthiness and a disbalance and a dysregulation. Yeah. And so this book is really cool at working you through all of those pieces. And I would highly recommend that. And then if you're somebody who struggles with getting into conflict, meaning you're avoidant of conflict, I talked about this. We had a whole episode about it. And so I suggest you go back and listen to that and or get the study, but nice. Just nice. That's the name of the study. That's the name of the book. And it really just talks about the cost that there is in avoidance, avoidant culture, and just being nice as opposed to being kind and truthful in Jesus.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad y'all were able to hop in here with us for episode 1 of season 2. And we've got a lot more to come. So as always, contact us. You can email us. You can comment, share. And we started telling you last season to write a review. How can they write reviews?
Yeah, so go ahead and write reviews. You can do that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you are listening to your podcast. It really helps us get the word out. But here, we need this from you, really. These Am I Wrong, those segments, we want to keep doing them all throughout the season. So we need you to write in so that we can continue pulling real life stories that can catch Theo and I off guard. So go ahead and email those to between Sundays at newlife.live. Yeah. And I promise you that we're going to have so much fun reading them and getting through them. But we really want to help you work through the stuff. So go ahead and do that.
Until next time, we love y'all.